National Basketball Insider Matt Norlander discussed why BC will be making a move. Will it happen? We'll discuss why it needs to, but why BC may be hesitant to get rid of Earl Grant.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details on your Eagles, you are in the right place. Locked On Boston College is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. We put the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. On today's show, a quarterback you need to watch for in the class of 2027 that could be connected very heavily with Boston College. Then we're going to talk about Earl Grant. Why would BC actually keep him? And an insider, a national insider, talks about why it sounds like BC is already going to be making that move. So let's dive into this. There are 2 games remaining for Boston College basketball. They're going to be playing on later this week at Virginia Tech, and then they close out the season on the road, at home, against Notre Dame. Now, if they lose out, actually, I think if they lose either of these games, they're done. I believe Pitt and Notre Dame are going to hold specific tiebreakers against them, and BC just needs to win out to get it. Now, it sounds from Blake James's podcast that the line in the sand has been drawn, and it's the ACC tournament. Now, that doesn't mean that even if they make the ACC tournament, that Earl Grant's going to be retained or fired or whatever, but that's what it sounds like. But I was reading on CBS Sports, part of the 247 network, and Matt Norlander, who's a college basketball insider, talked about different coaches that were in situations that were hot seat related, right? And he, right near the top, was Boston College. And here's what he had to say. Earl Grant's time in Chestnut Hill is soon to be over after 5 seasons, 4 of them ending with a sub-500 record. Boston College has been the black sheep of the ACC for 15 plus years. It's in the wrong conference, and as a result, the program has lost its juice long ago. It ranks among the 5 or so least desirable power conference jobs out of the 80 in the sport. But it can and will still draw someone on the upswing, someone who believes that they can be the hero and do something that hasn't happened since 2009, coach the Eagles into the NCAA tournament. Well, put aside all the negative stuff about BC, which Matt's not wrong, but that you hear the things about Earl and that doesn't sound like some of the things that we've heard where Kevin Stone of Rivals is saying, oh, I've heard some people say he's going and they don't want to do 2 hires at once and all that other stuff. And I saw Nick Petralia said something very similar. Matt is about as connected as it gets in college basketball. And he's saying it sounds like it's done. And honestly, for all of us, it makes a lot of sense, right? The team has been listless. You have the terrible losses every single year. Joanna McNamee just got fired for similar types of things where you're losing to your Central Connecticut's, your Albany's, your Tarleton States. You're an ACC-level program. You should not be losing like this. You're also a very, very bad basketball team. Just put it out there. You have some fun players. Fred Payne's fun, and Bowden Kapke has had a few moments this year. But you are in the 350s in almost every offensive category, and that was like that before they even got to the ACC part of their schedule. They're painful to watch on offense. They can't close out games. All of this combined with their schedule and the way that and their standings make BC, it to me, it just doesn't seem like you can. There's no way Boston College can go and say, you know what, things are going to change in a year, or we're going to do this and just push this off a year, because that just seems negligent. It seems like you're just going to be, you're just kicking the ball down the street a little bit, because it's going to have to happen soon. Ask yourself this question. Even with a little bit more talent, do you think Earl Grant could win more and get BC to that next level, just making the tournament. I don't think they could. I go back to what happened the years that Quinten Post was here. This is what that year to me, some people point that out as, hey, he was good. To me, it even strikes me more that this is not the right guy. You had an all ACC level center who is now in the NBA. You had a guy who ends up at Clemson and becomes one of the best defensive players in the ACC. You have Devin McLaughlin. You have all these other, Mason Madsen, some of these other players that were playing alongside them. And all you could do was get to the NIT. I personally believe that year, if you had a coach that could have coached them up just a little bit more, they would have won it, because there were a few of those WTF losses in there. They won a few of those, we wouldn't be talking about BC not being in the tournament since 2009. To me, all of that combines to making, just the perfect storm of this team needs to make a change. And to see Matt, Norlander saying the exact same thing, it makes a lot of sense. And it's not just Matt. ESPN had one last week that said the exact same thing. So I think there's smoke to the fire. I think that you're seeing these reports coming out. These insiders are hearing things. Agents, that to me, this means one thing. Agents are probably starting to hear this job is going to be open, and that the agents then get in touch with these, media members who then can kind of push it out there. They know that this is going to be an open spot. BC cannot afford the results on the court, but more so just the support around the program. It is brutal how no one cares about BC basketball right now, other than a few diehards. You watch those games and the stadium is empty. And I go back to when I say this all the time. I go back to when I was there. I was there during the Jared Dudley's years. It was hard to get tickets to those games. They turned away students my second year at BC. You had people tented out and they ran out of student season tickets. Can you imagine that? You just watched the game last week where there was like 10 students there. This is a culture change. If Blake James is serious about all this stuff, you need to start now. Just wipe the slate clean. Get a new coach. And I think that's what Norlander's hearing here. I think we're going to hear about this soon. And I've seen folks too, some of you guys out there that are like, oh, why isn't he fired him now? Listen, no matter who the head coach is at BC, no matter who the AD is at BC, BC rarely moves on from a coach in the middle of the season. Jim Christian was a unicorn when it comes to that. Otherwise, they will let a coach just tank it out for the rest of the season. Steve Adazio, Steve Donahue. Like, you can go down the list. Most of these guys made it through. Frank Spaziani. They made it through the end of the season. They let them kind of just sail off to the sunset. So because there's a week left, they're just going to let them finish it out. They're going to let Earl finish it out. He's well liked by his team. They don't want to, just rock that boat. Let him, send out the email at the end of this week, probably on Sunday, that says, there's BC announces a leadership change, in the men's basketball program. And that's where it ends. In a moment, I'm going to flip the coin. Why would BC actually keep him? I got some thoughts on that in just a moment. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Throughout this whole season, it's been Fred Payne. Fred Payne he's had his ups and downs, but he's showcasing why he's one of the most talented players on BC's roster. Even when things are getting tough, he's out there making buckets, bringing BC back into games, and really showing he's an offensive threat that's just scratching the surface of what he can do. These remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, the grit, and I never quit. We put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. That's what it took. That's what it took to get us there. There's more to Mazda because there's more to you. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make it to a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get yourself entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here, talking about BC basketball. Before I do that, I want to tell you about the Everyday Club. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to drop this morning, I'm going to drop a first cup with AJ. I'm going to talk a little bit more recruiting and football that you're going to want to make sure you hear about. And if you haven't already joined, you get to be part of our Discord channel. Discord is our group chat, talking all BC stuff with other BC fans. I hope you join over and become part of that as well. Now, I've talked a lot of talk, and I've made it seem like it's a foregone conclusion that BC is going to move on from Earl Grant at the end of the season. From a logic perspective, that's where my brain goes. Like, I just see the situation from the on-court product to the shape of the program. And as much as Earl Grant wants to say that they have made strides, they clearly have not. But this is Boston College we're talking about here, a school that has been very slow to make moves in the past. Jim Christian coached 7 years. Steve Adazio, same thing. It sometimes takes them a very long time to move. So that brings me to this question. Is there a chance that BC is going to again drag their feet and not make a move here when it's clear that they need to? I hope to gosh not. Because if there's a coach out there like Joe Gallo and you think he's going to be the next best thing, do not wait a year and let another school come in and poach him. I just saw earlier today, Locked On Syracuse, talking about how they would love to have Joe Gallo here in Syracuse. Let's not let that happen, because that will make me a very sad panda. Go out now and make those moves. But I do worry. Boston College never makes anything easy, whether it's the amount of money they put in, the amount of money they're refusing to pay to get rid of somebody. They're just their resistance to get on board with things like stipends and NIL. They're always 5 years behind everybody else. So who's to say that after this season we just saw, that they go, oh, I don't want to have to pay that buyout. That's a lot of money. We know BC could do that. They very well could just say, we'll just swallow another year of that because we're still cashing our ACC checks. I hope to gosh this isn't true. BC basketball can ill afford another year of stagnation, another year of utter just no interest from anybody other than a few diehards that are out there, because they need a shot of energy. They need a shot of infusion of enthusiasm, of optimism. And no matter what Earl Grant does, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen there. You know, to his credit, Earl Grant lost almost his entire roster last year. You brought back Donald Hand, Jaden Hastings, and Fred Payne, a bunch of freshmen, and that was about it. He goes out there. He tries to go and grab players. Chase Forte, one of the best defensive players, on his school last year. You brought in Bowden Kopke, and the guy that you thought would be a nice new big that you'd bring in. He brought in all these guys, and nobody cared. A few people watched, most people didn't, and they have not moved. That needle has not moved at all. Once people saw them lose to Central Connecticut and barely beat Lemoyne and barely beat Stonehill and whatever, they just stopped caring again. You need a new coach. But I could still see it's that dollar sign, and it's so sad. You have a school like Boston College that is, you get Blake James just 2 months ago sending out a press release about their Soaring the Heights campaign that raised $258 million. they're a private school, so we don't know what Earl Grant's buyout number is. But if honestly, if it's anywhere from $5 to $10 million, maybe up to 15, and you can't find the money to get rid of him, what are you doing? This is small peanuts basketball. If that's what you're gonna do. You need to. You're gonna have to buck it up. Look at what Texas A&M did with Jimbo Fisher a couple of years. How much money did they eat? How much did LSU just eat? Like if what you're asked to buy out is a fraction of that, and you're a Power 5 program, you're supposed to be able to do that. But I could still see BC. Father Leahy is still in charge for another 6 months. If he does not want to pay that money, he will make it very hard. You hear buzz that BC might have wanted to get rid of him last year, and that there were people, probably the president, that didn't want that to happen. And now what happens? This whole year is a complete waste of time. But it's BC. I worry. Here's what I worry about. I worry that we'll get to the end of this week and we're going to start to hear rumblings from Jeff Goodman, John Rothstein, the national guys that BC loves to leak out information, or agents. I don't know who leaks it to them, that BC is going to go for another year. They're going to, increase the amount of money they put in. I remember, I'll tell you a piece here. What this strikes me as, if this happens, what it will remind me of is what happened in one of the last years of Jim Christian. When I was at BC Interruption, when I was just learning how the whole college landscape and just learning how to do all this stuff, I wrote an article once they just, I forget who wrote that he was coming back. I said, this is ridiculous. This is, and I was right. And I got a phone call from Martin Jarman, who was very upset that I had said that. And what did BC end up doing for Jim Christian that year? It was the nutrition thing. They got a food shelf or whatever that thing was. It was like a mini market. That was their answer. Instead of firing Jim Christian and moving on, they increased nutrition. That's what I'm worried is going to happen again. Instead of firing Earl Grant, you're going to get a new massage table. Like, really, what are you doing here? Like, that's what I worry will happen, because we've seen it happen with BC in the past. But on the other hand, I know folks out here, some people have different perspectives on Blake James. I sense that he understands the gravity of this, regardless of what he said in that podcast, that he needs to make a move. And I still say that podcast, like, he shouldn't have said what he said, and it made things look bad. But deep down, I think he knows that he has to do what he has to do. And so I think BC could keep him, but I don't think they will. And to me, I don't think BC would ever keep him in any realm based off of any results. Like, I don't see them thinking to themselves, let's keep him for another year to see if he turns it around. That to me doesn't seem like a rationale that clicks based off of what we've seen. It's all about money. With everything with BC, it's always about money. And so if BC keeps him, and it's going to make fans, I don't even want to say angry, because I think most of you that I've talked to are the fans that connect with me, the fans that DM me. It's not even anger anymore. It's just complete apathy. Like, everyone's apathetic at this point. If they keep him, the apathy is just going to be drenching. It's going to be so dense. And I worry that that's going to hurt this program even more. So, there's a chance that they don't. We saw Kevin Stone's tweet that they don't want to do 2 coaching searches at once. That was the other part. That if that's the case, that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to say that right now, because they fired Joanna McNamee. They can't do 2 coaching searches at once. I tweeted it out. I said, I assume BC can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's enough staff members there that they could run 2 searches. It's not that hard. And if you if you chose to make your women's basketball coaching search a priority over your men's, I mean, that's a choice, but I'm not saying women's basketball is anything against them, but the importance of one over the other seems much more clear to me. But that's not even the point. The point is BC should absolutely be able to do both. That's not a hard thing. So, Kevin's saying that he heard it from some people. I really hope that's not the case. I hope that because you fired your women's coach, you can't run a men's coach at the search at the same time. That seems utterly ridiculous. So I hope that's not the case because I, what are we doing here? What are these people being paid 6, 7 figures to do if they can't interview how many other people work in positions where you can hire, 2 people at once? If you work in a business and 2 people quit, do they go, "Oh, I can't do 2 searches at once. That's too hard." No, they go and do it. It's not rocket science. Oh, I saw that and I lost my mind. So hopefully that's not the case either. In a moment, I need to take a breather. Let's go to football, where there's a quarterback that I'm watching that's coming to take a visit and might be a name you may want to make sure that you know more about. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data nationwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less time, less stress, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listener to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and show your support by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. And I want to get into recruiting. Now, if you follow me over at Eagle Insider, you get a lot of recruiting news. We had 2 articles up today. We're just diving in as BC gets into unofficial visits and official visit season as things start to really ramp up on that sense. Now, the class of 2027 quarterback position is something that's really interesting to me because BC has 4 quarterbacks right now. And usually that's around the number that they usually want for their quarterback room. You have 2 freshmen, Anthony Kolner and Femi Babalola, 2 transfers, Grayson Wilson and Mason McKenzie, right? But you always want to bring in a new quarterback, and you never know what the portal is going to do next year. So you're looking at this upcoming class. Who is BC going to look at? And one name so earlier today we heard Will Wood is going to be taking a visit. This is the quarterback from the Severian brothers. He's got offers from Wake Forest and Syracuse, I think Syracuse and North Carolina, Stanford. Like, he's got a bunch of big offers, but BC's in on him. They're going to have him for a visit this spring. So that's good to see. But the name that I'm watching for is J.D. Brown. J.D. Brown is a 6'3" quarterback from Florida, Walton County, Florida, who's going to be taking an unofficial visit this spring. And his name I'm watching for because he is BC through and through in my brain. When you look at what he does, right? So he's not rated yet. Ding. First note that this could be a BC guy. He does not have a huge offer list. He's got like Tulane and a few smaller schools that have looked at him. Ding, BC again. But the piece that I like, the piece that I'm surprised he hasn't blown up yet, is that he was at a camp in his junior year, and 247 was there. Tom Loy wrote about him and said that he has a live arm, is a real joy to watch. And I'm going to pull up the quote right now because I need to read it to you. So he said, he's 6'3", 190 pounds, and he absolutely rips it. I'd stack his arm strength and velocity up with anyone in the country at his age. After what I saw today, if he eventually blows up nationally, I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest. If you were to say, if you were to look at one other player that BC has, the one that I continually look at is Femi Babylon. Like Femi was a guy that didn't have a whole huge offer list, went to a few camps, and then blew up. I could see the same thing with JD Brown. Now he's coming in a couple weeks. We'll have to see how that visit goes. Usually, I think DiBiase has seen him throw. Like this could be a guy to keep your eye on. And yes, he doesn't have the sexiest offer list or the rankings or anything like that. But the fact that Tom Loy, who I trust a lot, saw him and said those things says a lot about where he could be. And this could be a real find for BC. So we'll have to wait to see how that goes. Well, thank you all. My name is AJ Black, and I cover Boston College here at Locked On BC. Hopefully you enjoy this. Again, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be joined by Mitch Wolf. He's going to go over the NFL Combine with us. How did Jude Bowery, Logan Taylor, and Quintavious Hutchins look? He's going to talk all about that. So hopefully you're here to check that out. We also have a game against Virginia Tech. We'll be talking about that soon. We have a lot here at Locked On BC. So follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Threads. And also make sure you're on our TikTok channel. There's a lot of good stuff there as well. Thank you all for following us, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.